information we have into this market. But of course, exactly what you need is something we don't know. We would have to evaluate what the needs of the market are, and then. But I think AGMA is in fact, I know we're quite interested in finding a way to expand the education and training that we offer in the United States to other parts of the world. I think you have a marvelous environment for that here, and a great opportunity in that you have some strong consultants who would serve, typically they serve as excellent instructors, and then it'd just be a matter of pulling together the programs, the curricula, and going forward with that. But I sense from talking last night with Mushtaq and Suleiman, and also just a few people early this morning, I think there's certainly enough initiative now and interest in collectively working together. And one of the things you have to do, someone mentioned we don't have to give up everything if we form an association or if we form a group together. You don't actually have to give up anything. The idea is that you should get some synergy, some working together that doesn't exist now on common problems, not individual problems. I frequently say to members, my job ends at your company's door. What goes on behind the door is your problem. What goes on in the environment is something we should have a role in, not fixing, but in putting together an environment where the actual manufacturers can fix the problem. You know what the issues are. We know how to work with membership organizations and how to bring consensus solutions. So I think there are opportunities to address directly some of the education and training that is needed here. It's needed everywhere in the world. It's not just needed here. But the demand for education and training is phenomenally high right now, I find, everywhere I go.
It's a very pertinent question. In fact, I tried it myself about 15 years ago when I used to take people, fresh candidates from institutes on the campus interviews. And on seeing those people whom we selected, and also wanted to increase the numbers and going to various universities. And I wrote communications to the dean and then the heads of institutions to put together to bring up some curriculum in the mechanical engineering to take some sort of specialization in gears and including bearings, which form most of the time in a gearbox, and study the theory behind it and then applications, combining the modern sciences in manufacturing, material sciences, everything, because that is not well addressed in any of the curriculum today in the country. Only, if I remember, IIT Delhi has certain program, but less known. So there is a very gross level of gap in what the industry needs, and because when we take people for recruitment, and then every time I take the final interview, we go to the basics, and I find they lack so much on that. And I got the information shared by some of the Belgium colleagues who were in ZF a few years ago in Coimbatore. Also, they told me this is what they find. They find some electrician or electrical people. They ask very first question: how do you like to handle a problem in a 3-phase or something? Immediately that fellow jumps what he will do with testing meters and things like that. He said, we wanted to know from you that you must have a gloves and you must stand on a rubber, insulator sort of thing. This basic is not coming, and then they talk much more things. So this is just an example. So what we do at Gleason is, I personally recognize this, and in a forum like Confederation of Engineering Industry in September in 2013, I addressed it to many of the deans and principals in Bangalore after the session that we talked about, and invited them that if they have any specific thing, they can always ask me. We can show around in our factory, have time with them to clarify various questions, and I said that. And many new companies in and around Bangalore, like GE and many things, they keep writing emails to me, asking certain design help and certain process technologies. They are youngsters, and having done post-graduation and doing some R&D work on this. We always respond to that. But I find personally there is a gap between like what Dr. Sriram Srinivasan said, between what they want and then what they jump up. I mean, there's just, one of the questions was how to design a locomotive diesel traction gear. And first of all, you must know, more about bending deflection, base pitch compensation due to thermal behavior of the oil. How these things, today they go with some software, and the correlation between what you get output and what exactly the physics behind it is a big gap. So we need to bridge that gap. So I believe that many of the machine tool manufacturers and this can come forward to unite with the industry and then set up in a recognized forum. It's not an easy job. Everybody is dealing with their own business, and 365 days there are a lot of challenges. But they have to spend some time together to combine in form of a forum, which can be taken up only by AGMA or sort of thing. If you go individually, it doesn't work in a way, so that they listen to that and work out some programs collectively and where to combine, how to combine, and then get students into that and give interest to them so they don't just drift away to IT and things like that without basic understanding. This is something which it has not been done, we have to do. I also recognize that I tell my colleagues in Gleason, in many of the places, that why don't we do something with this, and we respond. Every email on web inquiry, we religiously respond, and I communicate to them with taking personal time. But that comes one-to-one. So in order to take it in a collective way to the whole country as such and to the younger generation, this can be taken forward as a very important thing.
Good morning. My name is Mushtaq Jamal, and I'm from Bevel Gears, India. Ms. Mascarenhas, you've raised a very, very valid question, because this is something that we've discussed at the AJMA a number of times in small informal groups. And I've noticed my specialization personally is in spiral bevel gears at large. So when I walk into a room, I'm normally the youngest there by a generation at the very least. Now personally, that may sound like a great business opportunity, but overall, it's a very, very worrying issue, because whenever I jokingly tell my customers or even other clients, I tell them the most difficult people to work with for me are the people that don't know anything, because they come to you with a textbook and they expect for you to measure matters that cannot be measured. Or the other end of the spectrum, somebody who comes in who is extremely well informed but a little bit out of touch with what's practical. So what you're asking for is certainly relevant, and it's not an easy fix. What we have done as a company is we have found that due to price pressure actually, or the competition within the market, having anybody who's knowledgeable is definitely an asset to your company. So we had started taking people, instead of degree holders, we had taken people who were diploma holders and started to train them in-house. Now that's a very long-term process, and it's a long-term solution, if you will, but again, it's not a fail-safe solution, because people will always look at mobility thereafter. In the US, and the reason I'm citing the US specifically is because there and in the West, the US and in Europe, Western Europe primarily, all of the issues that they faced there, whatever it took 50 years to culminate, India and China are going to have the same issues in a matter of maybe 15 years, and that clock has already started to tick. That is severe shortage of skilled manpower, knowledgeable personnel. The advantage that India has is that it's got a massive, massive pool of young people coming out of college. And rather than trying to find maybe one massive solution to what you have raised, I do think small centers of excellence, either for training or centers of excellence through a university, would be a very, very good start. What companies in the US have done is they have actually sponsored and they have tied up through AGMA or independently small programs within just one or two universities there. And the one that comes to my mind is the one in Ohio. I think it's Ohio State. They have a gear program or a master's program in gear design. Is that right, Joe? Something to that effect. So that's a good area from where they have started to pull people out. But I don't think everyone has really understood how long it's going to take for this to be implemented and put into place. And like I said, there's no easy answer. So in our small part, we have started looking at people who've got diploma holders. And there's a secondary reason to that, which is that they are grateful for the opportunity, more so than some of the people who come out from the IITs, if you will, who come out with a sense of entitlement. to say, I'm going to be the head of the next company I walk into with no prior experience. But that really is a lot of the expectation that they have. So to combat that, if you will, we've had people come in, they're grateful for the opportunity, they're grateful for the exposure, and we've found that through that, it also drives another very, very important trigger within them, which is that their passion and their drive, their intrinsic drive, gets accelerated. Because without that, even the best trained people aren't going to stay in any given field. It's not the gear field necessarily, it could be any field at large. So I do think that there is a lot to learn from the West, summarizing what we've got. And I do think that the pool that India has here as young talent is a tremendous asset that can be capitalized on. The how of it is something that has to be worked on, but I don't necessarily think that it has to be across the board where you have to have 50 companies, universities, all jumping in. Just a small, tight nucleus on which a platform which is either scalable by design or otherwise just through sharing, because there is no downside through the fact that you need education, because your question ties into actually the feedback we've got from SKF and Mr. Senthil's question. By having the right education, by asking the right question, you will get all the answers that you want. So whether that be your testing for gearboxes, whether that be looking at the kind of bearings that you need, by having the right foundation, most all of your questions can be answered, or at least a solution can be found. So I hope that's addressed some of what you've got out there, but in our own way, we're just looking to say what is it we can do short term and what is it we can do long term, because this is not something that's going to go away. These gearboxes are being made to last for anywhere between 3 to 5, 20, 30, 40 years. So who is it that's going to be looking at them at that point in time? If they aren't interested in it today, there's going to be nobody on the other side to answer the call when that's required. Right.
Well, I think we've done the best we could within the limited time that we've had. If there are any specific questions, I think we could take probably one more question. Or if there isn't a question, then I think we'll pull the curtain. Senthil?
If I'm... Hello. Yeah. I'll move over a little bit. Good morning, gentlemen. I'm Jan Massolder from Ipsen, and we haven't talked about heat treatment yet. I found it very, very interesting that you guys talked earlier about the development of the Indian gear industry and also a shift towards more quality and higher grade materials, right? And of course, heat treatment can play a big part and support that shift. And I was wondering, from your perspective, what would be your requests or desires or wishes towards companies like Ipsen? How can we support those efforts, if there is anything?
You see, unfortunately, we couldn't get the question very clearly. If you want to just repeat the points one more time.
Sure. Better? Great. As I said, I found it very interesting that you guys talked about the development of the Indian gear industry and also a shift or a desired trend towards more quality and higher grade materials as well. And of course, heat treatment, and Ipsen, we're in heat treatment, of course, is a big part of that and can support it. So I was wondering, from your perspective, what would be your requests, desires, wishes, dreams towards our industry to support the Indian gear industry in moving or making that next step in quality?
If I understood your question correctly, you are trying to ask in the area of heat treatment, what are the challenges generally the gearbox industry feels, and what can be the expectation to look forward? Is that correct? Yeah. From my understanding, if I have good exposure to heat treatment in the high-end gears, going for turbine class and then power generation industry. And for quite some time, more than many decades, we used to make gears for that, which are high, like nickel, chrome, molybdenum steel, oil hardened, and the procedures and things are different. Then case hardened thing with carburizing and control of methanol to get the right content. These have been the challenges which the industry has walked through. Many of the know-hows were transferred, they practiced in an Indianized way with the quality of material, like Dr. Sriram was saying. You should not have any inclusions, you should have, so many difficulties were there. People understood how to do. But some of the thing in carburizing and fixturing of the components to contain distortions and the volume growth after heat treatment, these are something which are relatively not widely published. Many companies do carry their own tests and experiments, but they keep the results with them and they try to improve upon that quality from next stage to continue to get customer satisfaction. If, for example, 150 millimeter diameter pinion with less than 5 module running at 150 millimeters per second pitch line velocity with nickel, chrome, molybdenum steel when it is carburized and hardened, and if you cut the teeth in hobbing or any other process and maintain certain grinding allowance, eventually they get into too much of distortions, then growth, and how to contain the growth, otherwise you increase your grinding time, it gets into your cost calculations. These are day-to-day difficulties. But they found out that with different modules and different weight of the component,